Meet Dave Gulas and discover how he built a thriving fulfillment company and top-rated podcast, all while mastering the art of personal branding. In this episode, Dave reveals his secrets for leveraging podcasting to boost credibility, build relationships, and drive business growth. Don't miss these game-changing insights for entrepreneurs looking to stand out in a crowded market. Welcome to the Podcasting Secrets Show, where successful creators share their best stories, secrets, and strategies. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam. Hello, incurable creators, and welcome to this episode of Podcasting Secrets. Today, I'm joined by Dave Gulas. Dave is the president and co-founder of EasyDC 3PL, a fulfillment company, and he's the host of the Beyond Fulfillment podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Dave.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Can you start off by sharing with us a little bit about your journey to become a podcaster?
Yeah, so I've had a 20-plus year background in sales and executive experience in the pharmaceutical industry, where it was very niche and didn't really have to be on social media, wasn't used to building a personal brand publicly. And then when we started EasyDC and I was out there trying to grow this company as a startup founder, I quickly realized the necessity for having a personal brand and, where people needed to know who you were and be able to find you. So as I was getting out there on social media and traveling to shows and kind of building the brand, I encountered a lot of founders and different entrepreneurs I had conversations with. And, in the beginning, I had a lot of challenges, with multiple aspects of the business. And those conversations I found were some of the most valuable learning I had, is just understanding other people and what they went through and how they, solved certain problems. And then one day the idea just hit me, is like, hey, you should start a podcast. If you could put these conversations in a public forum, the audience could listen in and benefit, the guests would get exposure. It would help you. It could truly be a win-win. And at the time, I knew nothing about starting a podcast or anything like that. And, we have a marketing team that helps us, with our web stuff for the company, and two women, and one of them has her own podcast. So I said, hey, what do you think about this? This is what I'm thinking. They said, yeah, it's a great idea. You can actually get started really easily. And they basically showed me what to do and how to do it. And we put an announcement out before anything was done, just to see if there was any interest. We got a great response on LinkedIn. I had people volunteer to be guests right away. And I just kept going. We came up with a name right away and booked the first interview as soon as I could. And, from conception of idea to publishing the first episode was less than 30 days. And
wow,
we just never looked back.
In that process, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
Just knowing what to do. I mean, literally, that day we said, okay, we're going to do this, picked a name. Okay, I like the name. And then it's like, okay, how do I even record, right? So they showed me how to do it over Zoom. And then it's like, well, how do I even do an interview the right way? So I'm literally Googling stuff and, watching videos and taking notes and that type of thing. And, what am I supposed to talk about? How, all those type of things. I didn't even have a mic in the beginning. I just said, let me just get this first episode recorded. And I truly believe too, from the very start, and my team told me this too, they said, the most important thing is the quality of the conversation. People are very forgiving of the production aspects if you have a good conversation. So just focus on that, get good at that, and we can fix all the other stuff as we move along. And, that's what I did. And we just kept going.
What advice do you have for other podcasters about how they can get better at having great conversations?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always, I've been in sales my whole career, right? And I've been a student of personal development for a long time, right? Always trying to be better. And a big part of that study is listening to other interviews of successful people and how they overcame adversity, how they solved problems they were dealing with, what challenges they've overcome. So I really tried to emulate that within my interviews, because it's the same thing too, where, a lot of people complimented me in the early days of all, what we're doing on social media and some different things. And, a lot of times too, the journey can be dark and lonely, and you don't know what you're doing, and you think something's going to work and it completely fails, and you got to pick up the pieces and all these things that you go through. And so often I found, at least on my journey, it's like a mental battle. Right. So you've got to win that mental battle as you keep going. And I found too, just hearing stories from other people and what they went through and how they overcame their own challenges is just very helpful and inspirational, and then you can get some really good practical advice just learning from other people.
Would you say that learning from other people and hearing their stories, is that the best way to keep your momentum going as a podcaster? Or is there a better strategy?
Well, I mean, that's certainly one way. Like for me too, right? I wasn't under any illusions of trying to make it any big, real big right off the bat. I was just focused on small victories, meaning like that very first interview, the guest thought it was great. My team thought it was great. We put it out, just had a handful of views, but the people that did actually take the time to listen gave it some really positive feedback. And that in itself said, wow, I really, I connected with somebody, I created value for somebody. And I just used that to continue to build. And, the next one and the next one. And every interview I found that it was like, it was creating a friendship and a bond with the guest. And they were really happy to get their story out and they really felt heard. And I just continue to build on that and use those small victories to keep going, as opposed to trying to shoot too high or think about the views early on or any of these things. I just wanted to have quality conversations, keep getting better, and just keep going, because, numerous people told me about the stats, and most podcasts never make it past episode 7, and, all these different, things that can stop you. So that was at the forefront of my mind early on, is you just got to keep going, keep recording.
So how do you do that? Obviously we can push through it and, have the grit to push through, but any specific advice of how we can keep going, how we can be consistent and keep that momentum?
Well, for me, I found it best to play to my strengths. So for instance, I've been in sales my whole career, so I'm used to prospecting. I'm used to having a pipeline and working that. So, I mean, that's when you're looking for guests to be on a new podcast that has virtually no audience in the beginning, you're going to have to talk to a lot of people and ask a lot of people. I mean, I started with friends and contacts I knew and warm leads, so to speak. But I had to do a lot of cold outreach. And so, but for me, that's not, that doesn't bother me. So I focused on that. And, I managed salespeople for a lot of years, and I've done a lot of interviews. So I was comfortable in that setting. So I just focused on that. And then my team was able to handle all the technical aspects, the editing, the posting everywhere, the chopping it up into shorts and all that. And we just developed a really good system to where I could focus on what I do best, is getting guests and conducting an interview. They can do the editing, and we got on a consistent schedule. And I just, as long as I keep, filling that top funnel with more guests to interview and doing the interviews, that we can, keep pushing out the episodes.
You talked a little bit about getting guests at the beginning when you didn't have credibility or following. And you talked about maybe going to people that you already knew. Maybe they were being guests on your show at the beginning to help you out and not necessarily for the reach they were going to receive. Do you have any other advice about how you can find good guests earlier on in your show?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, the podcast focuses on the entrepreneurial journey and what it's really like. So I was just focusing on entrepreneurs, whether they're in my industry or not, especially because I found that entrepreneurs love to learn from anybody, right? Any different industries or different strategies that have worked in even businesses that aren't the same. I mean, an entrepreneur will use anything that they can learn from someone to help grow their business, I found. So that's why I was able to ask a wide variety of guests. You just gotta ask people. You gotta talk to people. You can't get hung up on rejection. And the rule of thumb too, I found, especially in the beginning, is and there's a book by this title. I forget the name of the author. It's like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And, I found that to be very true, where I'd ask a lot of people, and some people would say, absolutely, I love that idea. Let's do it. And I'd send them the booking link and they'd book right away. Other people would say, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, sure. And then you'd send them something to book and they'd never book an appointment, right? So I found that they typically, it's really going to be either someone that's really excited about it or they're not interested, particularly if you don't have a following. But I was able to just leverage relationship. I asked a lot of people, and, we got the numbers we needed initially and just kept going.
What have been some of the greatest benefits that you and your business have received from doing a podcast?
Almost immediately, we noticed a big increase in conversions. And the best way I can tell too is like, because in our industry, right, brands, e-commerce brands will send us their inventory and we warehouse it and we do the pick, pack, and ship, manage the transportation aspect of it as well. But they have to really trust us to, hold on to their inventory, which is their livelihood, and then, fulfill it correctly. So they're always going to look up who we are and what we're about and research us and me, particularly being the founder face of the company. So just the fact that I was out there with the podcast and I'm posting videos online every day and I'm interviewing all these experts and people are having positive things to say about it, that and alone, I believe speaks volumes in terms of credibility, and it makes people feel comfortable. Because so many other companies in our industry, they operate as faceless, nameless brands, and you really don't know who these people are. So it just gives us a big leg up in terms of credibility. The fact that I'm not hiding, I'm posting videos all the time. If there is an issue, I'm not hard to find.
I love that. I love the focus of a podcast providing credibility, authority. How about the reach that you've built? As you've built these followers on your show, how did that additional reach help your business?
Well, it's helped a lot with our our Google My Business search too, right? Like we do very well organically without any paid ads in terms of how we perform against other much larger companies, much longer tenured companies than us. So just that in itself, and just the fact when you record a podcast, the content that you have, and then the ability you have to repurpose that in so many different areas is so valuable, because you can continue to post shorts and written recaps and thoughts. And then the guests, they want, they're excited to see, to get their name out there. And if they're talking about something about their business or a lesson they've learned, they co-promote it. You can get the network effect. So it just really is done well in terms of some like low cost organic marketing, and in a way that's fun and that, that people feel good about.
You talked about earlier some of the benefits that you receive from the guests on the show as you get to build those relationships with the people you're talking to. What are some of the benefits that your business receives or has received from those guests you've had on your show?
I mean, we've gotten direct business from it. I built friendships off people that I didn't know prior, where maybe we connected online. We had a, intro call and they decided to be on the show, and then we've turned into friends and they've referred us business thereafter. Yeah. So multiple times, and, people will call in and just find us and, hey, I saw you on YouTube. I'd love to talk to you. This is the issue I'm dealing with. So it just, again, right, and we do the best we can to link everything together with, the podcast site, our company site, my personal site, and, just use all that to co-promote each other. And it's worked well for us.
Podcasting Secrets is brought to you by PodAllies, the done-for-you podcasting services solution. When I speak with CEOs about their podcast, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they know they need a podcast, but they don't have time. Have you ever wondered how some businesses find a way to still run their podcasts while juggling their crazy day-to-day operations? The secret might be simpler than you think. Let me introduce you to PodAllies. This is a service that's changed the game for businesses in the podcasting world. PodAllies is a done-for-you podcast production and marketing service. They understand that while many businesses understand the immense value podcasting can have for their business, finding time to produce, syndicate, promote, and monetize a show can be challenging. PodAllies offers a dedicated team to handle virtually all aspects of your podcast production. From strategy and branding to audio and video editing and guest scheduling, they've got you covered. They even take care of creating blog posts, transcripts, and syndicating your content across multiple platforms. What sets PodAllies apart is their use of PodUp, their proprietary podcasting software suite. This allows them to streamline the entire podcasting process, saving you time, effort, and a bunch of money. If you're ready to become a thought leader, connect with your audience, and grow your business through podcasting without all of the investment of time and cost of doing it yourself, PodAllies might be the perfect solution for you. To learn more or to schedule a free consultation with a podcast expert, visit podallies.com. That's PodAllies.com. Now back to the show. A lot of the CEOs that I talk to, They say, I know I need a podcast, but I don't have time. How have you found the time to do this?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, right? You just got to make the time, in my opinion, right? Like I operate off a calendar. I have calls booked all the time. I mean, I do carve out time early in the day for deep work, but even the busier we get, I mean, there's things I need to respond to and deal with at all hours of the day. So yeah, it is challenging. And oftentimes the busier we get and the more the podcast gets busier, I'm trying to just give buffer breaks between the episodes to really be absolutely focused and give my best to it. But yeah, a lot of times I'm doing maybe research last minute. I'm doing certain things, or I'm running close with calls. So it's certainly a challenge. But you know, when we see the benefit and what it's done and so many positive effects, I mean, right? You're always going to make time for what's most important. So that's how I see. You just have to find a way to make the time and take that first small step and get into action and keep going. And that's how I've been able to create the momentum.
Tell us a little bit more about EasyDC 3PL. What do you guys do there?
Yeah, so we help e-commerce brands with warehousing, fulfillment, and transportation. So, you know, oftentimes, and you know, many of our customers are emerging brands to where maybe they're newer in business and they start out self-fulfilling and they reach that point to where if they really want to scale, they need to outsource that fulfillment to a 3PL. And oftentimes,
which means a third-party logistics company. That's what that stands for?
Yes, third-party logistics. So if you have a physical product that you're shipping, whether you're selling on Shopify, whether you do Amazon, or even if you have B2B, business to business, wherever your distribution channels are, you know, at some point when brands scale, they reach a point where they'll need to outsource that. And, you know, managing or running a warehouse and maintaining a lease can be a headache. Managing employees can be a headache. Negotiating carrier rates is tricky. All these things that are so important as you grow and scale, they reach a point where it really makes sense for them to outsource that to an expert and just focus on what they do best to grow their business. So that's where we come in. And we started the company originally because we knew numerous people that were having problems and challenges with their own 3PL where they weren't getting the right service, orders weren't going, complete lack of communication. And with our experience in the pharmaceutical industry where we're dealing with small businesses and independent pharmacies, it's just a very challenging, high touch, high customer service environment where everything's urgent. Orders come in late in the day. They need to be across the country overnight because the medicine's urgent and things go wrong all the time. So we're used to solving problems on the fly and dealing with small business owners that have deadlines to meet. So we thought at that time, you know, we'd be a great fit to have a 3PL and use some excess space we had available to start that business. And that's what we did.
How can third-party logistics companies help podcasters?
Well, I mean, it's really, we help anybody. We have a wide variety of different businesses and entrepreneurs in there, but we help anybody that has a physical product that they need to distribute. So, I mean, we have everything from apparel, beauty products, nutritional supplements, books, home goods, you know, all sorts of different stuff. So, you know, if a podcaster has merchandise to distribute, or maybe they have a business where they're selling a physical product, that's where we can help them. But that's what we do. And the way I found it to be valuable too is, you know, everyone we're dealing with is an entrepreneur. And if I'm out here interviewing entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs will want to hear that, and then they'll get to know about me. And any of them that have a physical product that they distribute, we potentially have a solution for.
So if a podcaster has a book, or maybe they have merch with their logo on it, or maybe they're a gardening podcast and they sell fertilizer or something, they can send you that book or that shirt or that fertilizer, and then you guys inventory it in your warehouse. And then when orders come in, they go to you and you ship that out so that the podcaster doesn't have to find their own warehouse space, and they don't have to run to the post office, and they don't have to, you know, pick, pack, and ship those products that are being sold. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll have access to our warehouse management system, so software where they can see real-time inventory, one-click tracking. They can get a full picture of what their business looks like. They can have access to our carrier rates, so they'll save money on the shipping costs. And yeah, they won't be running to the post office. We can take care of all the aspects of fulfillment, and they can focus on growing their business.
Yeah, I love it. Don't have to deal with returns or any of those headaches. Tell me about a little bit more about personal branding. You've referred a couple of times to personal branding, but you're obviously talking about a business setting here. How does personal branding apply to a business?
Well, so for me too, when I first got into this industry, I was practically invisible online, right? And there's 10,000 plus 3PLs nationwide, and you feel like you're just kind of in a big ocean and trying to be noticed. So and so many companies too, right, do operate like without a brand. So instantly, if I wanted to get known as with a newer company where we're not deeply entrenched and experienced in this industry, I was going to have to get out there and really be visible. Yeah. So whether it's posting videos on social media, all the trade shows I'm at, and then that just naturally evolved into the podcast. And I was I was a guest on a podcast at a trade show very early on, and they gave us the video and we put shorts out, and that always got such a great response. So I instantly realized very early on the power of video. So that kind of naturally helped evolve into the podcast as well. And yeah, people want to do business with people. So if you're growing a company, you really want as many people as possible to know who you are. And again, if it's a bootstrapped startup, right, you're not dealing with a huge budget for all this type of stuff. So you have to find creative ways to get out there and to get eyeballs. So podcast is one way, being guests on other shows is another way, co-promoting with all the guests and with the network, their network, that you have to find creative ways to really get out there. And that's how I've done it. And it's been good for us.
What are a couple of the most important secrets that you've figured out that have kind of been your secret sauce?
Well, for me, right, it all boils down to just having I said it on this other show and they named the title that, and I said, wow, that really makes sense. It's just having a default to action, right? Particularly like when you're dealing with something and you have a challenge, you don't know what to do. You've got to do something and just take action and get in motion and start solving the problem. Even if you don't have it all figured out, just make some sort of progress and just keep taking that next logical step, even if you don't know the full path. So that, that's what I've been able to do with the podcast. That's how I got it started. And now, yeah, even just like a week ago, I was looking, I was like, okay, I'm a little short on the backlog, got a bunch of stuff coming up. And I realized like, wow, I need more guests. And I kind of just went on a blitz and I asked a bunch of people and I booked a bunch more guests. And, it's just kind of like whatever the situation calls for, you got to realize what actions you need to take and you need to do it. And also too, just consistency, right? Like the more you do something, the better you get. So not being afraid to fail, to make mistakes, to look silly as a beginner, because that's really all in your head, right? Those are kind of all those tricks the mind will play on us. But the reality is, people are so busy that it's hard enough to get them to pay attention. Like no one's paying attention to the failure. The failure is if no one watches. And then it's like, so what did you really lose, right? No one really saw you, right? So I just continue to focus on getting better, taking the actions, being consistent, and continuing to grow. I make progress every day, and that compounds over time.
Dave, what's been the best part about your podcasting journey?
The best part, I think, is just the relationships, right? Like, so we've, as of this recording, we've released 64 episodes. So of all those guests, I mean, every single one has had, positive experience at the end. We form a bond, created some new relationships that's turned into business. Or even just, I've been able to connect people, right? Like I met this person and I met that person. And I said, you guys really should talk to each other. And I've made numerous intros where it's turned into a business relationship and both people are better off for it, even though it has nothing to do with me. It's just that ability to network and create these relationships because that all comes back to you, right? When you're adding value, you're doing positive things, you're really trying to help others. If you keep doing that, good things are going to happen. So for me, it's just been the relationships and the networking have been the best part.
What would you say to others who want to start a podcast but haven't yet?
Yeah, I would say you just got to get started. You gotta just start. I mean, whatever, if you got to decide, okay, what's the show going to be about? What's the content going to be about? Is it an interview format? Is it a solo cast? Okay. And I mean, once you have that figured out, you have a title. If you need a guest, get that first guest and just start. And once you do that, just keep going. That's what I've done. I mean, certainly I didn't have any special qualifications or experience. I just found a way to start and keep going. So that's really my secret. And that's what I'd recommend to anyone else. And, I'm now, as I'm out there too, I'm trying to help others. I'm being guest on numerous shows that maybe they just started and they only have a handful of episodes, but I'm trying to help them, support them, and encourage them on their journey. And it just helps everyone.
You talked about early on in the podcast about how a podcast can help increase our credibility. What can we do to make our podcasts more credible?
Yeah, for me, I think, again, coming back to the quality of the conversation, right? I always think, like, if I have a guest and I'm researching them and I see, what they've gone through or challenges they've overcome, like, what can I learn from this person? And because what would the audience want to learn, right? What would an entrepreneur want to learn from this person? I mean, the episode we just released the other day, the guy has a robotics company based in Ukraine, and he had a $5 million private equity investment on the table, and then it got pulled when the war started. And so, okay, bad luck. And then furthermore, he had to abandon his factory and build a new factory underground because he's in a war zone. So you talk about having to pivot and having to deal with adversity as an entrepreneur. I mean, that's a hell of a story. And he stayed in business and kept going, and he's rebounded. So you hear something like that and it's like, yeah, well, I thought I had problems, but I mean, look at some of the stuff that other people are dealing with. So for me too, it's just getting those stories out there and offering some encouragement to others and using that as a way that everyone can learn some valuable lessons and use it within their own business.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that podcasters make, and how do we avoid those?
In my opinion, it's just waiting for things to be perfect to start. Trying to do, I was agreeing to go on one show and they were talking about they schedule like 2 promo meetings prior to the podcast, and then they record the podcast. And sometimes too, if you complicate it too much, you just never really get going. So I would just say, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going is a famous quote, right? Like, just get it in motion, get started. If you make some mistakes, okay, you learn something, fix it, keep going. Because the more you do that, you get in motion, you stay consistent. No one's going to remember the mistakes. They'll just look at what you've turned into. And that's how you learn, grow, and get better is you just start and you get those reps in.
Of all these episodes that you've recorded, is there one that stands out that particularly resonates with you, something that you learned from it?
Yeah, there's one, and it's actually, it's one of our long form episodes that's done incredibly well in terms of the views. It's got over 10,000 views currently, but it's with a guy named Brian Esposito, and he's a lifelong entrepreneur, and he was building a company and back in 2016. And then middle of the afternoon, he got hit by a drunk driver out of nowhere, was heavily concussed and injured in that accident. And he couldn't work for a long period of time. And everyone around him abandoned him. His businesses at the time fell apart. He went millions of dollars in debt.
Wow.
And it was just looked like he was done, but he was able to withstand all that, come back, get healthy again, work himself out of debt, keep going. And now he's got equity in 100+ companies. And, he's just such a, just positive person and always willing to help out. And he's got a huge network, and everyone that knows this guy just loves this guy. And, that's why I think the episode's done so well, because he's so engaged and he's always trying to help others, almost like he has a new lease on life after he came back from that. So that's something too that just sticks out. And, he even said, he's like, look, after what I've been through, I don't feel sorry for anyone. Whatever you're dealing with, trust me, you can overcome it. Look what I did. You just got to believe and keep going. So, you hear a story like that helps you, with inspiration for whatever challenges you're facing in your own life.
Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. If our audience has enjoyed this episode like I have, and they want to learn more about you and your products and services, what are the best ways for them to do that?
So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn at Dave Gulas, Gulas, or the easiest way online, you just go to davegulas.com. You'll see links to everything I do with Easy DC 3PL, the Beyond Fulfillment podcast, Freight by Dave, our freight division, and you'll see links to all the podcasts that I've been guests on. This one will be up there as well. And yeah, that's the best way to connect with me.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you.
And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number one, focus on quality conversations over perfect production when starting a podcast. Number two, leverage your existing strengths and skills in your podcasting efforts. Number three, consistency and persistence are crucial for podcasting success and brand building. Number four, repurpose podcast content across multiple platforms to maximize reach and impact. Number five, use podcasting as a tool to build meaningful relationships that can benefit your business. Number six, personal branding through podcasting can significantly increase credibility and visibility. Number seven, don't wait for perfection. Start your podcast and improve as you go. Number eight, podcasting can be a powerful networking tool, connecting you with potential clients and collaborators. Number nine, sharing stories of overcoming challenges can inspire and provide valuable lessons for your audience. And finally, number 10, podcasting allows you to create content that showcases your expertise and builds trust with your audience. Thanks for joining me for this episode. I wish you success in your podcast. And if you're looking for a great podcasting platform, one that has 50 plus tools to help you create, grow, and monetize your venture around a podcast, I encourage you to check out podup.com, where you can get a free trial and a free podcast challenge course at podup.com.